This is episode 180 on the Happiness Happens podcast, and I am Simona, your host. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation today. I'm really excited to kick off this conversation with my guest, Philip. You're going to love him. He has so much insight to share around EFT and around tapping. We're going to be talking about how does it work, what is it, and what are the ways in which you can use this healing modality to reprogram your subconscious, find deep healing, and ultimately transform your life. In this episode, Philip Mountrose joins me to talk about this and more, and we even do a mini live tapping session so that you can experience some of the benefits too. As pioneers and innovators in the realms of spiritual growth and healing, Philip Mountrose and his wife, Jane Mountrose, are holistic coaches, energy healers, and authors of numerous books, including their new book, which is called The Loving Power of Your Soul, a guidebook for realizing your true potential. The mission of the Awakenings Institute, their nonprofit organization, is to facilitate the unique gifts that each individual brings, receives, honors, and respects, where we are all nurtured and are allowed to blossom in our own gifts. So, you're going to find this conversation incredibly insightful. I know you're going to learn a lot because I did too, and enjoy the tapping session that you will experience towards the end of this conversation. Be sure to share it with someone you love who needs this little dose of hope and happiness and inspiration today. And I can't wait to get into it. So let's go. We're going to have a great conversation about EFT, about tapping and all of that. Before we dive into this conversation though, I do want to ask you, it's a question I ask all my guests right at the beginning, and it's, what does happiness mean to you?
Well, happiness is feeling that you're on track, that you're doing what you came here to do, that you're making the best of every day.
I love that. And you know what? I love that so much because it's very simple. You know, it doesn't have to be a very big and confusing and long-winded answer. Happiness can just be, it can, just is. So that's a great, reframe for the conversation as we begin.
Yeah, I would add that you're on the road to fulfillment as well as part of that.
I think that's a very important piece as well. And I feel like fulfillment isn't something that a lot of people pinpoint as a feeling that they're not achieving, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel like not a lot of people will be able to describe that or put that into words. What do you think?
Well, yes, I think it's part of the bigger picture, like the deeper meaning. So if you have a sense of what you're here to do, which is use your gifts and talents, things you're actually good at that you enjoy, that's the irony of it. It's kind of hiding in plain sight in front of you, the things that, hey, I really enjoy this. Could you actually do this a lot? Something that you're good at, that you enjoy, that helps other people? Yes, you can. But it is free will, it's a choice, it's a recognition, and it's kind of also a stage of getting there and realizing that more clearly for many people.
And I think you just touched on something really big there, which I love, is that, it is free will and it is a choice. And at the end of the day, we do have that choice, to do what it is we want in our lives, or, a job that we want, or living our lives in a specific way we want. But it really does have to do with that choice. And I think that a lot of the times there's a big fear associated with doing that choice or taking that leap or taking that step.
It does. It seems to run up against a lot of fears and doubts and programmings and question marks, which seems to be part of the journey of having that challenge, because it's, for some people, they just naturally find their talent and they love singing or helping people in certain ways or something since they were a child, and they just keep doing it. But for many people, it takes a while, and there might be a midlife crisis or transition to get along a little while chronologically, get up there in years to kind of say, hey, wait a second, the routines, what I was trying out, what I was just sort of making a living for is not enough. There must be more to life than this.
I agree with that completely. And I would love to touch a little bit on this idea of reprogramming, because I know for my own self, when I first started in this world of self-love, self-acceptance, self-help, and, going on that journey, it's been a journey, let me tell you that much. And I don't think it's one that ever ends once you start it. But I know for myself, I had so many things that I needed to reprogram in my subconscious mind, in my conscious mind, like just so many different beliefs and stories, ideologies, and they weren't necessarily mine to begin with, right?
Right, yeah. So they're stored in the unconscious mind, as we know. They're programmed into us. And who are they programmed into us by? That's an interesting question. So where did that thought come from? Sometimes, either you say something and you're kind of wondering, where did that come from, or think something, or you hear someone and say, where did they get that from? They got it from someone else, and someone else often has an agenda or was just programmed themselves, and the beat goes on in kind of until you wake up. That's part of waking up. What are you waking up to or from? A lot of it is that programming, which some of it is useful, some of it is helpful, some of it is well intended, some of it is not. But the discernment and the individuation and your going back to happiness and fulfillment is found by waking up and recognizing what you're good at, what you enjoy, what you're here to do, and how you can serve.
That's really great. I love that. And let's backtrack just a little bit here for our listeners. I would love if you could share with them, a little bit about your journey and how you've sort of gotten into here.
Who is this guy who's talking? Where's he coming from? I remember when I made my first video, you have to be careful someone doesn't ask you, who died and made you God, where are you coming from? Well, who are you to say this,
True.
And, that there's some truth in that, but there's actually, part of following your heart and following your guidance, you become kind of your own expert, your own guide to a large extent, and following your own wisdom and soul and developing that. So where did I come from? Well, I actually came originally from Buffalo, New York. I grew up there, and it became after a while very unhappy because it was sort of a middle-class neighborhood where I just didn't feel like I fit in, and our family kind of ran into financial problems, and that was kind of challenging too. So I was kind of actually living in a poverty level family in a middle-class neighborhood, which was kind of an interesting of two worlds. But most of the world was sort of a comfortable white community, white 1950s, kind of Republican community there. And at a certain point I realized it was very tribal by junior high school. People were in their cliques. And I know that is part of growing up in adolescence, especially now. It's kind of a stage. So that's fine to one degree, but it was so artificial, it was so unnatural, it seemed to me, like it's almost like you couldn't talk to certain people, like a caste system. We have it in our society, actually, in many ways. And that kind of sent me looking. Actually, I didn't know what to do as a child, so I reacted a lot to that and was sarcastic and cynical. And I do have that kind of streak to me, but it's pretty. At a certain point, I realized that really didn't lend itself well to spiritual growth, although it's good to be aware of things and have maybe a good sense of evaluation. But eventually, I thought I would maybe become a film director. I went to film school.
Wow.
At UCLA, and that was very exciting and creative. But then I looked at the path forward, and people may say, in terms of happiness, there's forks in the road, like there's choices. And that's where your soul will come in. And our new book is The Loving Power of Your Soul, and that's what our whole life, my wife and partner Jane and I have been devoted to. And I looked at, in my 20s, would I want to be a Hollywood writer and director? And I looked at what Hollywood was like, and I said to get to where I wanted to go would probably be years of doing things I didn't like, if I would even, be one of the ones who could write and direct and get that far. So I chose educational path, became an educator, teacher, and that was fulfilling to a degree. It was kind of a placeholder to where I was going. But eventually what I was passionate about, Simona, was spiritual growth. Like this is really kind of all my path of happiness and fulfillment, where I belonged in the universe. And I tried different things, and I eventually joined a spiritual group. And that was interesting, and that had a lot of learning, and I still use and teach some of that, what I learned about awareness. They called it self-remembering. It was a Gurdjieff-Ouspensky group for people who know that kind of work. But at a certain point, and that's where I met my wife and partner, Jane Mountrose, and the guru, the leader, had all the power. We kind of looked up, like, why does that person, speaking of programming where we began,
Yeah.
Why is that person the one who's, the truth on high? Why don't we? And that kind of said, I guess we could do it ourselves. And we left and we started looking for different ways. And part of it was healing. And a lot of people don't realize that healing is an essential part of spiritual growth and development. For a while, you can just tuck it under the rug and just kind of deal with your anger or fear or sadness or pleasing or controlling behaviors. But if you do want to wake up from the programming, and a lot of that is just, I didn't know any better, and that's what everyone else does, and you have to start to deal with it, right? You have to confront it. And it can be kind of uncomfortable, and you do need help. And then it takes a while to find the right help and try different things. So we eventually learned how to do healing, energy healing, and started some of our own healings, our version of holistic EFT, the EFT tapping. A lot of people know that, and I know you've had people on. We have our own version. Another energy healing, spiritual kinesiology that we developed and combined it with coaching. And have written a lot of books and done a lot of programs and have a lot of free articles and downloads on our extensive website. And that's what I do now, and just share the love and my discoveries and creativity, and that's fulfilling to me and helps other people.
That's amazing. That's a great journey. That's a great story. And, I think you are right. There are so many forks in the road in our lives that can lead us down different paths. And, depending on what you believe, some people believe in a different universe. Maybe that is the life that you took and the path that you took. In an alternate reality, maybe that is exactly how it played out.
Yes.
And it's nice now, too, though, because then you have all of your different background and all of your different experience that you can now combine into what you do today, even with that film, even with that video and the educator background. It's interesting when we go through our path and through life, we don't always realize why we're going through all these specific things until we get to where we are. And then it makes sense as to why we had to endure and go through the things that we maybe didn't understand why they were that way in the beginning.
That is wonderfully said, and a huge point, Simona. So when things are happening to you that are confusing and overwhelming, which periodically happens, it's interesting. You're going along, everything's fine, and just something happens, and then and you're in a different world. You have an accident, an illness, a loss, something strange happens, or even wonderful happens, and you have a tremendous good fortune. And your life is sort of you're in a different universe suddenly, like, wow, the world is very different, maybe temporarily. And sometimes if it's challenging, like you were saying, it is good to remember what you said. Hey, I don't know why this is happening. This is very stressful. This is very challenging, but it's here to teach me something, even if it's not to make this choice again,
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly it. And now if we look through the lens of your healing modalities that you and your wife do together, it's EFT, and you mentioned that you do it through a little bit of a different way. So can you talk a little bit about what EFT is, in case someone who's listening right now hasn't actually listened to one of those podcast episodes before? And I'd love to hear your perspective on it and how it's a little bit different for you.
EFT, it's not emotional fund transfer. That's a different EFT. It's emotional freedom techniques. And it's an energy healing. It heals with energy. It started in around 1995. It was publicly shared by Gary Craig, who was an engineer who studied from a therapist who had an early version of it called thought field therapy. And basically, it works with the meridians, the energy centers that we all have. We are energy, and they're lines of energy. And people who are familiar with acupuncture may have more or less an awareness of this. So the idea is our system is continually in and out of balance. It either has too much or too little energy, and by tapping these key pressure points, these key points on your body, along with saying affirmations, targeted affirmations to whatever the issue, the stress is, the fear, it could even be physical things it's sometimes worth, because the pain, the confusion, whatever the situation. Amazing things have happened in a lot of documentations and research, shifting the energy imbalance where it neutralizes it and it integrates it back into kind of a reboot, into a reset into your body for healing and awareness.
Very interesting. Okay, and so how do you use this modality? How do you use this to benefit your life, benefit yourself, maybe even relationships with other people, as well as yourself?
Well, we continually have stressors, and I'll go over the key EFT acupressure points, and you can just do what's continuous tapping, and people can follow along. It's just an interesting even meditation where you tap the top of your head, and these are all key points that have meridians around the body, and then you tap the side of your eyes. And when you do this, it seems strange, it looks strange, and then the side of the eyes, either both sides. And sometimes they're a little sensitive. Under the eye, there's a bone under your eye in the middle, and then under your nose, and you tap 5 to 7 times lightly, and then the chin, the middle of the chin, and the collarbone, and under the arms like you're embracing yourself. And those are the 7 key pressure points. And what we've added to this, one of the things we've added in our holistic EFT, our kind of version of it, and we wrote one of the first books on EFT, Getting Through to Your Emotions with EFT, is that what we call the reset process. So you can reset your situation by tapping across the top of your head for balancing your left or right brain and breathing.
Oh.
And then tapping across your heart to integrate your heart for heart awareness, and taking a deep breath. So it looks a little strange. It's very brief. It doesn't take a long time, and it has a remarkable ability to sometimes almost instantly remove stress. Now, it depends what it is. If it's something minor, if it's something acute, meaning it's just kind of a short pain or something that happened just recently, it's often easier than if it's chronic, meaning long term. So if you have a long-term pattern of, say, procrastination or something, one round of the tapping isn't going to do it. If you're somewhat afraid about maybe taking a test or speaking to someone, or maybe have a little pain and you do the tapping, and you say something like, even though I have this pain, or even though I have this stress, I love and accept myself, you say an affirmation while you're tapping. And there are different affirmations you can say. So that's a little description of it.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, and so, you do these in a sequence. Is it always the same sequence that we're doing it in? And also, is kind of a two-part question, does each spot that you're tapping, does it have a specific significance? Or is it all the same?
Right. This is very holistic, meaning it's not so much linear, and it's not like if you tap a wrong point or don't get the exact spot, it's not like a surgeon where, And so the reason for that sequence from top to bottom is really just simply to remember it, so you don't have to think about it. Roger Callahan, the predecessor of EFT, thought field therapy, he had actually about 3 points, and he would do different points for different conditions.
Oh.
With EFT, it's just an overhaul. So, maybe you only need 2 points, but, instead of trying to figure out the 2 or 3 that maybe are most important, you do all 7, because it only takes a few seconds as an overhaul.
Very interesting. That's very cool. Okay, so you can use it so I guess what I really want to know is, how do you decide, this, is it always the same sequence, top to bottom, and it works for any type of challenge you may be facing, type of thing?
Yes, it works. Maybe yes, maybe no. It depends. It's not like an always cure-all. Sometimes it works quickly. Sometimes you have to do different rounds. Sometimes different things come up. So if it's emotional things you're dealing with, maybe you're fearful of, what's happening to your pet. And then if you do a round of EFT, then you feel sad, because another emotion has come up. Maybe you're sad, you're worried, you're sad about losing your pet or something, or a person. So there could be layers, as they're saying, and you address the layers as they come up.
Okay, that's really cool. That makes a lot of sense, because, it's kind of like, okay, you kind of take the first feeling, first emotion, tap through that, and then you're kind of peeling back the layers of an onion every single time. Yeah. It goes through, and then till eventually you feel that release. Sorry, what were you going to say?
And you can measure the intensity too of it. Just you say 1 to 10, how strong is the fear or the sadness or whatever the issue is, or the confusion or the anger or the sense of rejection or whatever you're dealing with.
Okay. And then through that lens, we can start to reprogram our subconscious mind, the beliefs that we have about ourselves, by going through. Right. So can you talk a little bit about how that would work?
Right. So what we are all about is reprogramming through your soul's awareness. Now this is where it becomes holistic. Instead of just being like a pill, like an allopathic pill, which could be good to take a drug at times. You may need it or may need it to stabilize, or just do EFT just to get back to normal or reduce the stress, and that's good. But going back to happiness and fulfillment, to get at the deeper thing that you're here to do, that you're really here to learn, that takes a little more doing. And what we like to do is connect with the soul. And I can kind of give you an experience right now.
Sure.
You want me to do like a little mini experience, and this is one of our Connecting with Your Soul's Way from our new book, The Loving Power of Your Soul. We describe it.
I love that.
Which
we will talk about before the interview ends.
Yeah, this will kind of combine a couple things, and you can do EFT with it too. So you have a challenge, you have something that bothers you.
Okay.
You got it? Mm-hmm. Okay, pretend it's down in the mud. Can you sense it down in the mud?
Yeah.
What is it like emotionally? What are we talking about, just briefly? What are you referring to? Just could you mind mentioning, like, if it's a feeling or a sense or something, just to give it a
I would say it's like a heavy feeling.
There's a heaviness. Is it, you want to say what it's about? It's heaviness about?
I think life in general.
So you just have a heavy feeling that something in your life is kind of getting heavier. Okay, well, this may be good. Sometimes there's general feelings of fear or stress or a malaise or whatever, and it's like being down in the mud. So you're in the mud, right? What's that like, being in the mud with that heaviness for just a moment? It's just going to be temporary here, and we're all going to lift ourselves up together. But it's what's it like in the mud there, Simona?
Stuck.
Feeling very stuck, right. And this is a common kind of thing that we go through, right? So imagine now lifting up. You either see or imagine lifting up to a high mountaintop. You're at the sort of the top of the world. You're at this wonderful, lofty summit perch, right? 360 degrees, perfect temperature, perfect sunlight. You have the big picture there. In harmony with everything. What's that like, Simona, at the top of the mountain or the world? What's that like for you?
Freeing, and I would say bliss.
Okay, so from this freeing and blissful, more soulful place, the higher you, the more connected, the more unified you. How does it perceive the old you, the one that was in the mud with the heaviness, the stuck you?
That's a good question.
Just kind of for a moment, can you get a sense of how it's perceiving it from the top of the mountain?
Yeah, it's like an elevation.
Yeah. So what's it like when you kind of remember the old you? What would it do to send in some healing energy or awareness for you?
That's a really good question. I think it would be... That's a really good question.
Just feel into it. It'll come to you. It's nothing you have to think about. It's something you feel into. Okay, well, that's integrating. Just that's the energy, and it may take a while to do this, and I know we're kind of in the moment here. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. You just imagine that, and you send that loving energy. You can do that from atop, in your case, atop the mountain, to the heaviness, just to free that up and to be more in the mountain, in the world, but not of the world. Okay? Knowing that you and all the people listening can go to your own personal summit, top of the world, mountaintop at any time to connect with your soul and the universe, to get insight and to get the deeper feelings of happiness and fulfillment. It's all there. It's all there for you.
I love that. That space in between feels a lot like deep empathy and caring for my own self, regardless of what the scenario is that's going on around, right?
So if you're in deep empathy and caring, that's tremendous. And I think we all need that deep empathy and caring, not only about others, but ourselves. And that's compassion, sort of a deep empathy. Yeah, very good description. I like that. So that's one way, just sort of, we kind of went into, did a little quick deep dive into an experience there for you.
I love that. It feels lighter already. And I think
yes,
that's
you're
the
lightening
key.
up.
That's the key, right? It's not, oh my goodness, there's so many different things that people say about healing and this and that. And it's like, I read this thing somewhere and someone said, like, your healing gets to be like part of your journey, but it doesn't have to be your whole identity, and I think a lot of the times when we go through things that are very difficult, it so easily becomes very ingrained in who we are as people, where that's not necessarily the case. It's just a fraction of a moment. It's just something we're experiencing or we're living through, but that doesn't define us as people, you know?
No. Yeah, it's something we can learn from, and we can change ourselves, and as we grow, we do continually change and grow, and from the soulful mountaintop. And you can do some tapping too as you get that lightness. I like that your term. You can just tap the lightness or whatever into you, the positive part, and that's a way of integrating, and another way of using the EFT tapping points. And if you do the reset process, so you're integrating that lightness that you just experienced into your left and right brain and breathing it in. Everyone can do that. I think everyone might enjoy a little more lightness. I certainly do. And then breathing in into your heart, integrating your lightness and your soulful awareness into your heart to help lift and lighten you up. Lighten us up. And breathe.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's experiential.
I love it. And you know what I like about this too is very interesting, not very often, but I tend to be more of like an anxious person, but not in like day-to-day specific thing. Like it's not really anything specific, but it's more just like it just kind of shows up sometimes, you know. I have more of like a high functioning anxiety where, you know, that tends to translate more into like overworking and all of burnout and all of that kind of stuff. So this pause is a beautiful, like, welcomed pause in my day today of being able to just stop and like connect back to self and connect back to your heart. It's beautiful.
Yes, and that's well said. So you pause. We're literally pausing, and you're breathing in that light and sending it out. And you and me, and we're all becoming more of that light, sending more of that light into the turbulent, dark, heavy world, lightening it up. We become that light more and more, so we become kind of lighter, more transparent.
I love that. That's wonderful. Okay, so I feel like a different person right now.
Great. You were pretty good when we started. Now you're even better.
Even better. I'm about to go through the rest of my day just having the most wonderful day. I would love if you could share with our audience just a little bit about your new book and where people can find it and what they'll learn by reading it.
I have a copy here.
Yes.
And it has a beautiful cover. My wife's quite an artist. Isn't that a beautiful cover?
Oh, that is so beautiful.
The Loving Power of Your Soul, a guidebook for realizing your true potential.
Oh, beautiful. And if you're listening to this episode, you can actually watch it on YouTube as well, where you can see what Philip is holding up.
Anyways, it's a book where we've taken this 30 years of studying spiritual development, holistic healing and coaching and life purpose, and put it into this book. We've actually written quite a few books, but this is our newest one that came out very recently. And 6 ways to connect with your soul. One is to go to that mountaintop like we did, and also how the soul works with your body and your intelligences during this lifetime in meditation, and how it relates to meditation and mindfulness. And then the last part of the book goes into the holistic EFT that we discussed briefly, and another healing modality called spiritual kinesiology, where you heal directly with your soul's energy.
I love that. It's amazing. Wonderful. And where can people find your book? Would you recommend just going through? We'll have the links in the show notes, but...
Well, certainly they can get it in Kindle, ebook, or paperback at Amazon, and probably other distributors. But what I'd like to share a free gift with the audience, which has an excerpt from the book and also a holistic EFT tapping video and some holistic resources. So this is a tiny URL that's easy to remember, a shortened URL for our very extensive website, which is gettingthru.org. But to get your free gift, the downloads of the book excerpt and the EFT tapping video and resources, it's tinyurl.com/spiritual-kit for the healing spiritual kit. tinyurl.com/spiritual-kit.
Perfect. I will put that in the show notes so everyone can grab that. This has been so wonderful, Philip. I feel like we've covered so much today, and I want to ask you one more question before we part ways here today, and it's a question I ask all of my guests. I've been asking it for years. I'm always so in awe of the answers that I get, but it is, how can someone create a little more happiness in their day, every day, starting today?
Well, one thing is they could do those EFT tapping points, the top of the head, the eyebrow, the side of the eyebrow, and under the eye, under the nose, the chin, the collarbone, and under the arm, and then or they could just do the reset process, tapping across the top of the head, breathing in through the nose, tapping across the heart, and breathing in. If they just did that, and if they thought of maybe being on the mountain, and how can they lovingly take their next step?
I love that. Thank you so much. And lastly, where can our listeners find you so they can connect with you?
We have that extensive website with a lot of trainings and free downloads and books, and it's a 25-year-old website, so it's quite big, and it's getting thru.org, getting thru.org. We thought, since we started the website in 1997, we wondered, what do you name it? So Getting Through still seems to work. I don't know if we'd name it today as that, but it's spelled THRU with the through because it's hard to spell through the other way.
It's true. That is so wonderful. I love it. Okay, I'll make sure we have all of the links in the description here for everyone. Philip, thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thanks for having me on. Really enjoyed it, Simona.
Me too. This was wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. Be sure to connect with both Philip and myself. Let us know what you loved about this episode. And I look forward to hearing how your EFT went once you try it. And remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.